and welcome to the Dagobah system and another episode of Cookie Pocket. This podcast is about film. Today we will be discussing Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, directed by Irvin Kershner and produced by George Lucas, of course, and starring familiar names from A New Hope, Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and all the others on new adventures elsewhere in space and whatnot. And I feel less of a need to summarize the plot for our listeners, given how widely known this is. But it starts on an ice planet. The rebels are kind of picking up the pieces. They're kind of on the run. And then at some point, Luke kind of splits off from Han and Leia and meets this amazing Jedi Master named Yoda, while his friends go off and do things in asteroid fields and stuff. And it's really fun. And it's a little bit darker than A New Hope, and by all accounts, certainly an iconic film to most people. So with that slight summary out of the way, what are your general impressions and ratings?
Well, I tend to have the I tend to have the dissenting opinions on Star Wars in this group, but I want to get this out of the way early on. I do really enjoy this film. It had been a while since I'd seen it, but on this watch I was really struck by how much of an improvement this is from the previous film in terms of presentation. I think George Lucas even said that when he was making the original Star Wars, he was looking to make kind of a sort of goofy Flash Gordon style runaround, kind of cheap and cheerful classical science fiction fare. And so, by that definition, I think the original film works as what it is. It's very flat and presentational. It kind of looks like an old B-movie with a little more kind of width and budget put into it. A little more width and budget. Not a great deal, because in places it's obvious they're working on a lower budget in that film. But here, the focus seems to have changed from we're making a fun little B-movie to we're making a big series of movies now, and I think the tone and the presentation shift accordingly. So I think Irvin Kershner directs this as much more of a dramatic, kind of tension-filled movie. There's a big emphasis on that in the lighting and in the cinematography, and I would say even in the story. The story starts to deal with kind of bigger arcs and more mature themes than were in that original film. So I think this is a solid movie, and I think in terms of kind of filmmaking, it's a vast evolution from that original Star Wars film. So yeah, a 4 out of 5 from me. I think it's a great film.
I also think this is a great film, Zach. But I gave it a 5 out of 5. Mitchell stamped approval because George Lucas has big brain, that's why. And and A New Hope really it really laid, like I said in A New Hope a bazillion years ago when we did that episode.
Yeah.
I said that it really laid the foundation for a lot of different ideas and a lot of different avenues of approach, and that's an army term. And like pretty much Zach said very eloquently that he ramped up everything to 11 when it comes to the space opera department. He kind of included all of the starship battles and all of the lightsaber duels and the blaster duels, and just like was all inclusive about that, and all the quick cuts and the John Williams and everything everything just works. And and having that overarching story for Luke and having everything be so mysterious and at the same time intriguing is so hard to pull off a lot. And having the intrigue of the time period, like when it came out, and having people not knowing literally what's going to happen at all, and then just having that mystery constantly be around and everything being all mystical and fantastical and like who's this wizard green Muppet thing on this stupid swamp planet thing. It's just there's so much life to every shot, and there's so much life to a lot of the sequences, and the acting is actually surprisingly limited in a lot of ways, in a good way, because of the inexperience of the actors and just knowing the value of dialogue in respect to what's going on. And just that's why every line feels so memorable, because there's really not a lot of dialogue. And even when there is, just the action just starts happening again. Or we cut to one of the 3 timelines that's happening between Vader, Luke, and Han, and everyone else. And just having those 3 timelines constantly happening, it's almost like a really complex sitcom, because usually sitcoms have like 2 things like going on at once. Usually they don't usually have a linear format, and having that character progression be guided by the action sequences and being guided by the ultimate hero's journey with Luke, it just comes together so well, and it's so surprising how well that it comes to the end, when you find out the big thing, Dad, happens. And I don't know, it's just like it's really something you have to experience, and it doesn't feel like a film in a lot of ways. It just feels like a really big experience. And even if there's things that you could definitely criticize, particularly like Zach had mentioned, the pacing, I just feel like it's just everything is just overwritten by how well it's executed, how well the production is executed, and how well the story comes to a head at the end. And it's just so intriguing for like literally everybody. Like, I watched this with my grandmother, and I didn't think she was gonna be interested at all, and she was like totally into it. And I was like, yeah, you know what? How couldn't you be into this? So yeah. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I think it's probably the best sci-fi sequel ever made. In a lot of ways, I think it really builds upon everything in A New Hope, and it really makes you want to see what happens, how this whole story concludes.
Yeah, well said, Mitchell. I completely agree. I also gave this a 5 out of 5. As far as I'm concerned, this is pretty much a perfect movie. But I think, Mitchell, you really said it best when you said it's an experience. And I like the sitcom comparison, too, because it does make sense. And I'm glad you used the word timeline, because something some people point out is there's sort of a discrepancy in time that passes on Dagobah versus the time that passes with Han and Leia, and I guess you could read that as like a minor plot hole, but I think it's handled pretty well if you don't overthink it too much. And in terms of pacing, I don't really have an issue with the pacing, except I think you could argue that there's like a little bit too much of falling action after the big reveal, the I am your father. I kind of thought like the Cloud City escape was like a little longer than I thought it was, but like Mitchell said, I think that's totally overwritten by how massive that reveal is and how shocking it is to an audience member that doesn't expect it. And there's just so many positive developments. Zach, you did a good job of summing up the technical things, but my perspective being more oriented on the characters and the things that happen, in terms of introducing new faces, we've got several iconic ones. Well, I guess 3 really that stand out. Obviously Yoda, Lando, and Boba Fett are all like instantly recognizable in pop culture now, I would say, and are enduringly iconic for being basically supporting characters in this sequel that is several decades old now. So I think that just further suggests how massively successful this was on more than just a cinematic level. My first specific question had to do with direction. Zach, I know you commented a lot on this in your original thoughts, so maybe I'll hand it off to Mitchell first. Okay. But in A New Hope, it's true George Lucas kind of had like this pulpy idea in mind, but he also occasionally described it as like a documentary type approach and not caring a lot about how things were framed and just kind of showing what it was that was happening, and that was kind of it. Not especially concerned with cinematography, I suppose, versus this film, which is, depending on your perspective, a massive improvement. But I guess, Mitchell, did you notice a huge difference between the 2 films? Did you have a marked preference between the 2 in terms of direction, or are they both just kind of take it or leave it?
I think it's more take it or leave it, because I feel like the cinematography kind of lends itself to the story they're trying to tell, because Empire Strikes Back, the themes are pretty radically different in a lot of ways from A New Hope when you really, undo it. I mean, I'd say if you watch 2 minutes of Empire Strikes Back, you'd know that it's Empire Strikes Back just of the way, not even just the way that it's framed, but just kind of what's going on, because really the cohesion is a big part of it. I feel like the lengthy vistas and the props and the costume design, everything is all immaculate, and really the Empire Strikes Back is a bigger movie in every way. I mean, they are ambitious in literally every aspect, in terms of direction, and I think it definitely comes across. I think if you see both of them back to back, you can definitely notice it. But I feel like A New Hope holds on to the mysticism and depends more on the audience not knowing what's going on a lot more. The Empire Strikes Back is more dependent on expectation and subverting them. And I had mentioned that mysticism is kind of a big Star Wars theme that always is around. But A New Hope is definitely more like, ooh, what's going to happen next? And then Empire Strikes Back's like, what's going to happen next? Oh my God, what's going to happen next? For like the entire 2 hours. So I think just there's so much different about what Empire Strikes Back is trying to accomplish as a film and as a Star Wars movie, that I think the direction is good for each of them as independent films.
Okay, so while I do not agree, I don't agree with George's description of his direction in the original as documentary style, because looking at that movie, nothing in A New Hope looks like a documentary, especially documentaries from that time. It's very clearly a pre-thought-out, pre-framed movie. It's just George doesn't really know how to shoot an interesting-looking movie. He knows how to write interesting ideas, he just doesn't know how to shoot them to look interesting. Irvin Kershner knows how to make a movie look interesting. I was really struck by the color in this movie. There's like a running theme of blue versus orange or purples versus reds throughout this entire film that adds this great visual dynamic to lots of scenes of conflict, especially the cryogenic freezing chamber. That's where it's most pronounced. But it's
Carbon
even
freezing.
Okay, I'm praising your favorite movie. All right, give us a slap. But it's even present like on Hoth, from like the glow of computer monitors versus the coolness of the ice. And there's great little moments of camera movement that I doubt George ever would have thought to implement. Specifically in the Wampa Cave, when Luke is hanging upside down and he reaches out for his lightsaber, and there's this one shot where the camera just gently dollies in slightly into the side to zoom in on the lightsaber a bit and make your mind go, something's going to happen. What's going to happen here? It adds that tiny bit of tension before the lightsaber flies out of the snow into Luke's hand. And it's things like that. It's little touches like that from, I think, maybe a more artistically inclined director that kind of leave you more gripped and satisfied by this movie, or at least that leave me more gripped and satisfied by this movie than I was by A New Hope.
Okay, fair enough. I can tell you're trying to not like burn George too hard, but despite that, everything you say still sounds like a really
Look, I'm trying, all right?
burn
I'm trying.
No, I acknowledge the effort and I do appreciate it. I am definitely a little bit more with Mitchell here, and I'm sure that's because I'm a lot less literate about these things than you are, Zach.
Wait, what are you
and
trying
I
to
care
say?
less
Wait a minute.
I agree, like stylistically, if you were to assign each of the directors to one of the two films, it definitely made sense for Kershner to be on this one as opposed to A New Hope. And I tried to pay attention to camera stuff this time around. I really did, because I've seen this movie, I'm sure, probably like 24 times, maybe more than any other movie I've ever seen, almost certainly. And despite that attention, I didn't notice like a huge difference. I knew there was. I noticed there was more thought, I guess. But I guess it didn't make as much of a difference to me as a viewer as it did to you, Zach. But I understand where you're coming from, and I think those are all fair points. Another pretty important development in this movie is another score by John Williams.
Yay!
And several new iconic pieces. I think the ones that stick out the most to me are obviously the Imperial March. We've got an excellent theme for Yoda. We have the asteroid field sequence, which if you've ever played a Lego Star Wars video game is burned in the back of your head for all eternity. And you've got some nice like Lando song stuff going on in Bespin. My question to you guys is, This score is a little bit less pronounced than A New Hope. I will say you're bombarded with the music a little less because there's just a lot more going on, I think, in A New Hope between the Cantina Band and the Binary Sunset and different sequences of music when they're on the Death Star and a massive medley of music during the trench run. You're not bombarded as much with this grand orchestral stuff. It's a little bit more spaced out. Do you have a preference between the two scores? Did any of the songs stick out to you this time around? And just what did you make of more of John Williams' work?
Well, I did notice the score here, definitely. To start out with, as somebody who's a big John Carpenter fan, I kind of prefer my score a little more subdued than pronounced. So I did...
Maybe in John Carpenter movies.
I did. I'm not making a... Yes. It's not like... Okay, so I'm just saying, based on my personal taste in score, I do prefer a less pronounced score. So this movie I preferred in terms of score for similar reasons. I'm not making a direct comparison here.
Sure.
But additionally, I feel like with the upped budget, Williams was also able to create maybe more varied tracks for this movie than he was for A New Hope. Because one of the issues I had with A New Hope when we rewatched that was it felt like he had a handful of really good themes, but in places it felt like there were moments in editing where they were like, okay, we need music. This. And so you end up with like the Binary Suns in places where it doesn't feel like it should really be there. The Binary Suns belongs in the Binary Suns, but there's scenes where that same theme plays in A New Hope where you're like, I don't really know if this is appropriate here. I never had that issue with this. With this score for The Empire Strikes Back, I always felt like the right music was in the right place. It's staccato and exciting where it needs to be, but also not kind of stealing all the focus from the scene, and it's subdued and backing where it also needs to be. So I think this is a nice, not especially flashy, but functional score from John Williams.
Because of how integrated John Williams is in Star Wars in general, and all of the films and everything, I'm going to rely back on my mysticism and argument. I'm going to rely on that again, because a lot of the drama that comes from A New Hope is from the not knowing what's going on and not knowing what's going to happen next type of thing. And I feel like I'm gonna because you called out Binary Suns, okay, Zach, because you had to call out my boy Massine.
Yes.
I feel like the drama and the anticipation of what's going to happen is overhyped on purpose. I feel like that was done deliberately. I don't feel like that was like, oh, we're going to have to put something crazy here because he's looking into the two suns and we don't know what's happening. You know? But it's an opinion, right? It's opinionated. I'm not saying why. I'm just saying why I think it belongs there. Mm-hmm. But I would agree with your assessment of both. I think that it works a lot better in Empire Strikes Back just because of how varied the sequences are. It feels a lot less like we are in action now, we are in romance now, we are in nothing happening now time. And Empire Strikes Back, there's a constant back pressure all the time. Like there's always something that feels like it's about to explode even when nothing's happening. And I don't feel like they relied on John Williams as much this time around. I feel like they definitely had confidence in their vision when it came to each sequence, especially the fighter ones. I feel like John Williams really sticks out with the fighter ones, and those are also some of my favorite ones. But I do like Cloud City. Cloud City's fun. But like Dagobah you have Dagobah and Hoth and Cloud City and Bespin. So all 3 entirely in Hoth. So all those planets are entirely different in their feel and temperatures, and planets in general just have a lot of character to them. So I feel like that also adds on to his score a lot. So ultimately, Empire Strikes Back had a lot of good foundation for John Williams to settle in and do his good job like he always does.
I don't want to believe...
Yeah, I agree.
Zach
can
go
ahead.
Back. Zach can go back.
I don't want to belabor my point, but I want to clarify my point about the Binary Suns because I feel I may have been a little misconstrued. I think the Binary Suns theme works perfectly in that scene. But there are other scenes in A New Hope where that theme shows up. Like, for instance, it shows up in the scene where they're burning the, not Tauntauns, Jawas. They're burning the Jawa corpses. The Binary Suns theme shows up there, and it doesn't feel right to me there. And that's an example of a scene where I think they needed some music, and they took another bit and put it there, and it doesn't quite feel like it belongs to me. But the Binary Suns scene is beautiful. The score works where it is.
Okay.
I'm not certain that that's true, Zach. I'd have to go back and watch it again. But even if it is like reprised there for a moment, he's probably just reusing the motif, which is a fairly common practice in many, many, many scores and soundtracks.
Sure. It doesn't work for me, but I know that is common, yes.
Yes. My point is, I don't think it's a fair criticism of the music itself. So as long as we're clarifying that this is an opinionated thing for you.
This whole podcast is an opinionated thing for me.
Have you
Which
seen
is still
Braveheart,
wrong.
Zach? Have you seen Braveheart? They can play that theme over anything and it will work.
I didn't really notice the theme in Braveheart, if we're honest, but now we're backtracking, so...
You didn't watch the freaking same
But
movie.
like if the Binary Suns theme plays for like 5 to 10 seconds when Luke drives up in his land speeder and hops out, I don't think that's disruptive at all. I think that's very nitpicky to expect him to compose like a new motif that's perfectly assigned to every scene. But anyway, back on Empire Strikes Back, the film we're here to discuss. I actually prefer the music of A New Hope a little bit more, just because that really set the tone for what Star Wars sounds like and feels like. And like the title sequence, obviously, and Binary Suns and Leia's theme, and the trench run sequence, and obviously Cantina Band. Purely looking at the music, and like if I was listening to the music in a vacuum, independent from either film, I would prefer A New Hope. But I do think spatially moments work a little bit better here, honestly. I think Imperial March is maybe used like 1 or 2 times too many, just because it's so good. But that's the tiniest nitpick, and I'm not even too bothered by that. So, yeah. Next question. Performances. I think the most important part of this saga is the lead performances that are presented by our principals. And I wanted to ask you guys, what stuck out to you? I know both of you tend to gravitate towards Han Solo the most, understandably. But what did you notice about our principal characters and our actors? How did they grow in this installment? And how were each of them portrayed? And what did you make of their performances?
I feel like now that they have way more developed archetypes, because they are very archetypal in a lot of ways. I feel like that lends credibility to their acting, I guess. By virtue of the fact that they're playing archetypes rather than like some complex real life character. It's a lot more, sci-fi space opera-y. And I think that helps them a lot, because they have a set amount of values that they have to work with, and they have character arcs that just work for their character, and they don't have to like put any extra oomph into it to make it more believable, because they are the characters. Like the actors are the characters, so it's, I don't know, I feel like that just in and of itself, just because of how iconic they are, they're, regardless of their acting capability, I don't even feel like they're acting a lot of the time. And that's not just because, wow, they're really good actors. It means because Carrie Fisher is freaking Leia, Harrison Ford is Han Solo, so, and obviously, Chewie and R2 and C-3PO are all, I don't know. It's just, I don't feel like the performances really needed to be very much. And that may sound really bad, but Star Wars kind of has really, taken with this. And I'm going to use the sequels here very sparingly, but I'll say that the sequels feel a lot more closer to real life, maybe just because it's a lot less mystery. There's not really much mystery at all involved. There's a few questions that need to be answered, like any film, but I mean, it relies a lot more on the performances, and it relies a lot more on them, being more fleshed out and interesting, just because of the demand of movies now, and just how we're not in a flash and a pan anymore. You better do better than Empire Strikes Back, or you're gonna piss off half the world. So
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think that's a fair point. Part of why I think the comparison is always a doomed comparison because you're never going to find another Harrison Ford. You're just not. So how do you address that by offsetting pressure? You can't. You can only address it with that pressure in mind. And yeah, all fair points. I think I don't want to sound critical of Mark Hamill because I adore him as a voice actor, and he is Luke Skywalker and a huge fixture of my childhood. But like when he's like screaming out no, I can tell he's acting there. Like,
really?
Yeah, that's why I was gonna save that. Yeah, Mark Hamill.
I think that's his best moment in the whole series.
It is, but
I
that
think
doesn't mean that it was good acting.
To me, that's like kind of the only moment in the entire series where I'm like, wow, I believe he's in pain there, both emotional and real, because it would hurt if my hand was cut off, and I would also be shocked about it. Yeah, I believe that because he's like snotty and sweaty and like kind of tearing up, and he kind of looks gross, which like is applause to the makeup department as well. I'm not just saying that Mark Hamill looks disgusting, but yeah, I do think though to go off of Luke, I think Luke doesn't really develop all that much in this movie. I think Luke's thing as a character is that he comes to some realization at the very end of each movie and then develops in like a big hop between that movie and the next one.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways, Empire Strikes Back is kind of Han's movie. I think he undergoes the biggest arc in this, maybe because for a while Harrison Ford wanted them to kill him off, so it's possible they wanted to give him a satisfying arc before he froze to death. I don't know if at the end there was still a mystery of whether or not he would come back for Return of the Jedi.
There was, and that's why they froze him in the carbon freezing chamber, because they could kill him off if they had to.
Yeah, that makes sense. That has the feel of, all right, we're going to write this actor a really cool last episode on this show in case he doesn't come back. But, we can also just kind of put him in a cupboard in case he does decide that he wants to come back sometime.
Yeah, exactly. And I still would have no one else as Luke. I still very much like Hamill. I just think with regard to what Mitchell was saying about how like Carrie is Leia and Harrison is Han, I think there are moments where you can tell Mark is pushing a little harder than those two have to, which is fine and understandable. It's pretty unreasonable to ask him to just be himself when his hand gets chopped off and his dad is the Dark Lord of the Sith and whatever.
I got it. I figured it out.
Life.
Mark Hamill's trying to be an actor like Luke's trying to be a Jedi.
Oh.
I think that's a little unkind. That's.
Oh no! I mean, but
Hamill himself. If you were seeing this, I'm sticking up for you here.
No, Mark, if you're somehow listening to this, I'm terribly sorry for sounding critical because your performances have made my life, literally. Anyway,
he's never gonna hear this.
Moving on before I get. Yes, he's never going to. New characters. We can keep this question brief, but Yoda, Lando, Boba Fett. Am I missing someone? The first appearance of the Emperor too in this. Pretty big deal. Mm-hmm. And like some bounty hunter cameos and whatnot. What do the new characters do for you? Which of the bunch sticks out the most? And give me a little something about the new supporting characters, I guess.
Well, I don't really think the Emperor he's not really a character in this. He's kind of a cameo that's there briefly, and then, or should I say she, because it's actually played by a woman in that scene. But
in the original, not in the special edition.
Are we gonna talk about that?
I really like that original Emperor design. I kind of like how it kind of almost looks like Snoke, where it's got a very weirdly shaped head and very bulbous eyes. I kind of like it. I think it's a shame they went away from it for Return of the Jedi. But I think the best new character in this is probably Yoda, which is a great piece of puppetry. Specifically early Yoda. I think early Yoda, when he's just kind of like and throwing things around in the camp and hitting R2.
It's so brilliant.
It has the same charm as like if a Muppet just showed up. Like, especially those early scenes where he's kind of kooky, goofy Yoda. Like, if Pepe the Prawn had shown up and started rooting around the camp, it would have the same kind of vibe. Now, later when he becomes an all-powerful Buddhist monk Jedi, like, no, Pepe could not pull that off. But those early scenes are very kind of Muppet-ish, where you've got this little charismatic puppet with a funny voice causing chaos, and I was very amused by them. Specifically when R2 tries to take the sausage back and he hits him with the cane. I laughed quite hard at that, this viewing.
That's how I want to remember Yoda, as a beautiful piece of puppetry. But
Yeah.
I don't know, new characters. Yeah, Yoda's pretty hands down the best one. I'm gonna say a no for Boba, maybe a hard no for Boba
Wow.
because he literally exists for the plot. he doesn't
Yeah.
he doesn't exist as his own character, which is kind of this case with bounty hunters anyway. But hey, no offense, but Boba's still cool though. He's still cool the few
Yeah.
lines, Lando is definitely a very believable addition. Him being responsible these days and all that is a very believable thing for Han. And also it's good, it expands on Han's character to have him there. It expands obviously on Luke's character tremendously to have Yoda there. So having these characters be more involved in developing the main characters is a very good way of working around it, especially if you already have investment in any of the current characters from A New Hope. Then you're inevitably going to like these characters because all they're trying to do is help. And even though Lando kind of stumbles on that very terribly, but you understand he's just doing what he needs to do to preserve himself and everything, and that's the nature of the business that Han's in. So you get a more so you get it. All of the characters exist for the development of the current ones, and I totally agree with the additions. I feel like they're integral to the whole universe now, and there's nothing you couldn't really imagine Star Wars without them.
Yeah, I wholly agree, and I certainly agree Yoda's the best and most important. What a feat of puppetry. Not only does he bring that Muppet charm, like Zach said, but I'm never distracted for a second by, like, if an actual Muppet showed up. Like, if Kermit the Frog showed up on screen, I'd be like, oh, that's a Muppet. That doesn't belong in Star Wars. But I never feel that way, even the slightest bit with Yoda. He feels so incredibly natural. And that's a credit, obviously, to Frank Oz, the voice work and the puppetry, but also a huge, 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 massive credit to Mark Hamill's acting. Because he treats Yoda the same way he treats any other human actor opposite of him. And it's entirely convincing the entire time. So, great job acting, Mark Hamill. I'm a huge fan of yours.
We've recovered.
If you're listening.
You can talk to Muppets. Good job.
Yes.
As proved when he was on the Muppet Show before this movie came out, actually.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
training for
Oh my
Yoda.
Yeah. And I want to address the Emperor bit.
Oh yeah.
Zach, I actually tend to prefer the original Emperor bit to the second Emperor. Not because I don't love me some Ian McDiarmid, because I always love me some Ian McDiarmid, but his appearance in the special edition is much, like, in terms of what he looks like, he looks much more like Revenge of the Sith Palpatine than he does Return of the Jedi Palpatine, and I find that pretty distracting.
Yeah.
And I do like I want to say the voice actor is Clive Reville, if I'm remembering
That sounds
correctly, in
probably
the
right, yeah.
non-special edition.
It's a
And
very
I do like the
different voice, though. It's very kind of booming and low, not kind of the Ian
Yeah.
McDiarmid Scroogey hiss that he has in
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, I think it works nicely, and the scene's a nice setup for what's to come in the final installment. And yeah, new characters are great. Obviously, Lando is epic, and I thoroughly enjoy how often he mispronounces Han's name, even though
Han.
it's probably
And
an error
Leia.
that George
And
just
Leia.
didn't care enough about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leia says hand too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're all dialects. We'll figure it out, is what George said to him, apparently. All right, I think we've covered pretty much everything here. Obviously, a tremendous film. I would recommend it to anyone. Do either of you guys have any final thoughts?
I saw this on the old Disney Plus, and it's not my account, and I'll never get a Disney Plus account. But I think it's probably the best way to watch it. I mean, the color correction is really hard to beat. It's really a major factor in a lot of the scenes, and seeing it in 4K, I mean, really is just like, there's nothing, and there's so little that's actually changed that would bother you. I think the major thing is the Wampa scene, and I heard that some people criticize that because it looks like a human in a suit, but like, have you seen
I don't think
Yoda?
it does
It's
at all.
literally, it's just a puppet, so like, come on,
Yeah.
like they're using stop motion and like, there's just shut up. I think it works. So I think it's
too.
the best way of seeing it. Especially for the first time. Do not watch the original if it's your first time, in my opinion. I know I'm crazy. But and also I think there is a scream that they added in like I think it's 97, right? That they added in the 97 special edition and they removed in the Disney version when Luke falls because they were like, why would he scream if he intentionally falls? And I thought that's fine because John Williams, we got to hear John Williams. I don't want to hear from Mark Hamill. Sounds like the Lego Yoda when he falls. So yeah, highly recommend this. Anybody who likes sci-fi at all, really, at all. Anybody who likes older like hero's journey stuff. I mean, like, there's really just watch this. Like, just watch it. Like, I don't know what else to say.
Well, I am gonna. So I'm gonna dissent Mitchell's opinion a little bit. I think if you can, please track down a version of the original because I think that Irvin Kershner's cut of this film I think is a bit better than George's in the special editions. I think that George has some moments, specifically that Wampa scene where he adds in, oh, it's a cool creature, and it kind of takes away from the tension of the scene. So I think that Irvin Kershner's is a better movie. If you're looking for just more creative space fantasy stuff, maybe George's cut is for you. But I would say to people our age, because I know there are young people out there who have not seen Star Wars because they think it's something for old people and nerds. I'm somebody who doesn't really like Star Wars, and I think this is a really good movie. So, if you're a young person or somebody who's not ever really checked out Star Wars, I'd say check out A New Hope, check out this one especially. The rest you can take or leave depending upon what you think of these first two, but please do check out these movies. Originals if you can find them, but I suppose the special editions are passable if you know what you're signing up for.
And let us know if you start shipping Luke and Leia early on, and we want to get in contact with you and talk about your feelings.
Well, I can think of no better way to run up our engagement.
Yes.
Well, for this watch, I watched a 4K version, physical 4K. And I have to agree with Mitchell. I think it's a superior viewing experience, generally speaking. And in terms of like cut, like Kershner's cut versus George's cut, they're not really two separate cuts. There's like
it's basically
maybe
the same
30
film.
Seconds. Yeah, there's
it's the same
very
film.
little footage changed at all.
Yeah,
it's especially if you put it alongside the changes in A New Hope or Return of the Jedi. This by far has the least changes. And though I will say, I think if you're watching these for the first time, that you should try to watch the original.
Thank you.
The theatrical versions.
Okay.
I think
I just have
original
less
trilogy
faith in humanity, but
yeah, no, understandably, but I think first time through original trilogy on a VHS, and that should be in a perfect world. Those should be the first 3 movies you ever see in your life.
Yes.
Okay.
And then from then on,
Not
do whatever the heck
by
you
Zach
want. Like Zach
Garrigus,
said.
Then watch THX 1138 or whatever it's called.
Yes. And American Graffiti and The Phantom Menace, and then you're done. Those are all the films in the world. What was I saying? The special editions. I think everybody owes it to themselves to watch the original trilogy at least once.
Yes.
I'll add one
totally
movie to Zach's recommendation. I think you should finish the original trilogy, and then from there do whatever the heck you want. If Star Wars isn't a huge deal to you, then that's fine and understandable. But I think the first 3 really deserve everyone's attention. All right, I hope we didn't run too far over, but that does it for me. Thank you guys for a great conversation. Let's get to the bitty bits now.
We can review, yeah.
We can review.
Now, I believe I'm going first.
I know what I'm talking about, but you can go first.
So now I am going first.
Yes.
So, okay. I reviewed this on Twitter, and I knew I wanted to talk about it on here, but I have been watching Maniac, or rather I have watched the show Maniac from 2018. I watched like the first 3 episodes in 2 days, and then I watched the remaining 7 all in one night because I was really into it. Essentially, it's a mini series of 10 episodes, and the basic concept is that there's like a future world, or semi-future world, where everything, pharmaceuticals, technology, it's all kind of run by this central company that's sort of meant to resemble IBM. The logo for the show is based on IBM. The logo for the company are based on IBM. So everything, it's kind of like cyberpunk without the grit and grunge. It's like IBM cyberpunk. Everything's very kind of boxy and clean and white and clinical, which I think is an interesting look for a show like this. But basically, Emma Stone and Jonah Hill play these two people who sign up for a pharmaceutical trial at the company because they're doing an experiment where they're trying to use a combination of psychedelic drugs and computer therapy to eliminate trauma from the human mind. And there are some shenanigans that go on behind the scenes, and Emma Stone and Jonah Hill's hallucinations end up merging during the test. That's kind of the base concept, but there's a lot of things going on to the side and above and behind and below that make it a lot more complicated. And I really, really loved it. It's maybe the first, or the second show I've ever given a 10 out of 10 to. I love the characters. I think since Emma Stone and Jonah Hill are in so many different hallucinations and dreams throughout, it gives them a chance to not only play those base characters, but play subtly different versions of those characters in different dream realities. So they really get to show their range. I commented to Christian last time when we were talking about Braveheart. He kind of jokingly said, "Oh, what does?" when I said that the movie didn't make me go, "Oh, my heart." Maniac did. Maniac genuinely made me go, "Oh, no!" At some moments of like character relationships. It really sucked me in, and I cannot recommend it enough. Please, if you're listening to this and this sounds at all interesting in any way, please watch Maniac as soon as you possibly can, because it's very, very good.
That's been on my list for the longest time, but I think I'll finally get to it thanks to your recommendation.
All right.
I'm going to talk about more Star Wars things. Sorry, guys.
Shut up.
But what's going on in Marvel Comics right now is this event that they're calling War of the Bounty Hunters, and it explores the time period in which Boba is assigned to transport Han back to Jabba. But instead of it just being a smooth ride back, some hijinks happen, and stuff goes wrong, and Boba loses Han. Gasp! We all know how the story's going to end. We know he's going to get to Jabba's palace eventually, thanks to Boba. But there's some interesting stuff going on, and it brings back a character from Solo that hasn't appeared in any canon in several years, and to hardcore Star Wars fans is quite interesting. And in addition, there's some new publication also in the Marvel Comics, but also in the novels for the High Republic, which is this new era of storytelling that takes place before the prequels, with all new characters. The only returning character is Yoda, because he's like 400-ish years old and obviously a part of the Jedi Order, so he has to be there. But besides Yoda, everything is new. Tons of new locations, new characters, new conflicts, new villains, and it's very refreshing to anyone who's tired by some less inciting cameos in the TV shows or less ambitious storytelling and other avenues of Lucasfilm now. So I highly recommend it to anyone that's interested to a new lease on Star Wars.
And then I'm going to connect Star Wars one more time in here, kinda. BioWare developed Mass Effect. Mass Effect is an action RPG sci-fi. It takes place in 2183, and it's about BioWare developed Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic as well as Dragon Age and other RPGs. And it is probably besides Halo, it's my favorite sci-fi game ever. It is about you basically take control of Commander Shepard, who you develop as a male or female human, and you're an elite soldier trying to stop a rogue agent from wreaking havoc on other species. And you meet a ton of other species. It's an entirely developed universe from BioWare, published by EA, but before EA was bad. And it is so intriguing, and the decisions that you make, it's very much based on not only the action but also the conversations you have with non-playable characters, and everything you say basically is really tells all the other characters about what's going to happen, and it influences the entire story. And there's like a Paragon versus Renegade system, so you can also, on top of the regular decisions, you can also be more focused on justice or more focused on your own decisions. And being a renegade, so it's very developed, and it's really like for its time, for 2007, is insane. And they just released the Legendary Edition, so it's updated to 4K. They updated some of the general game stuff about it earlier this year, and it released along the second and third iteration. of the game. So I highly recommend it to anybody who's interested in cover-based shooters or RPGs, because it does both of those things really well. And it's a very fleshed out sci-fi universe, and I think it's very interesting to virtually anybody. So
Nice. I'll have to think about that one.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty.
Maybe you will.
We have one more segment.
Mm-hmm.
It's our game show, not really type thing where we... It's called The Rundown. Yeah. And it's going to be fun.
Hopefully.
We've got a doozy this time.
Yeah.
Before this episode, I was like, we got to crack down on our episode length, and we're well over in this one. So apologies to my co-host.
They know.
Yeah.
But alrighty, Mitchell, are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
Special edition color correction.
3 out of 5.
Probe droids.
3 out of 5.
Have a bad feeling about this.
4 out of 5.
Thinking they smelled bad on the outside.
3 out of 5.
Lando sliding in.
2 out of 5.
Harrison Ford pointing like Zach Garrigus in high school theater.
Oh, 4 out of 5.
This deal getting worse all the time.
3 out of 5.
Tamara Morrison overdubs.
2 out of 5.
How you doing, you old pirate?
3 out of 5.
Alec Guinness making his money.
3 out of 5.
A businessman or responsible leader?
3 out of 5.
The Imperial March.
4 out of 5.
Hello, what have we here?
2 out of 5.
Admiral Ozzel being as clumsy as he is stupid.
3 out of 5.
Yoda comedy routine.
4 out of 5.
Going into an asteroid field.
3 out of 5.
No disintegrations.
3 out of 5.
Telling the odds.
2 out of 5.
Snakes, lizards, and hell being canon.
3 out of 5.
Frank Oz is Yoda.
Frank Oz is Yoda.
4 out of 5.
Ha 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 ha.
Thanks for covering me.
Yeah, I had to make sure that one got in there.
Okay.
Oh, there's so many good ones we didn't get to.
we had like
Ooh.
10
I'll shovel them on down to the finale, I guess.
That's
Yes,
a lot
sir.
of finale.
It's a lot of shovel.
All right, who's got the preview?
I do.
Huzzah.
Okay, so next time we are going to be talking about... It's me, so, you know, it's going to be at least kind of weird. But we are going to be talking about The Ninth Configuration, which is a kind of forgotten movie. It's kind of a comedy, it's kind of a science fiction, it's kind of a horror movie, but not really. It's mostly a drama. It's written and directed by William Peter Blatty, who also wrote the acclaimed novel and script, The Exorcist. And it's... The Ninth Configuration is kind of a very, 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 very loose, like, spin-off of The Exorcist, but you don't have to have any understanding of that first film in order to see The Ninth Configuration. And it's a really interesting movie. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about. So if you are interested in interesting discussion or The Ninth Configuration, please tune in next time, because we'll be talking about that film.
Nicely
Okay.
done. All right.
Zach,
Thank you to all of our listeners. I hope you'll rendezvous with us at Tatooine at the coordinates that Lando gave us.
Zach, I have to tell you something.
Do you have to tell it to me now, before the episode ends?
I love you.
I love you too, Mitchell. And on that note, good night.
No!
No!